Hi, I'm here in Aquatic Park. This is where we're going to start our San Francisco walking tour. This used to be called Point Cove before it was a park. And from here, there's a lot going on, so it's going to take a while here. And then we're going to walk up the hill behind you, in front of me, up to Russian Hill. We're going to spend some time up there and then walk over to Nob Hill. And that's going to take a long time. I'm thinking several episodes of this. Please bear with me as we go through this. I'm using about 10 new technologies and I'm learning as I go. I'll get better over time. On the map you're looking at now, at the A pin, that's where I'm standing and filming. And the cove and bay are behind me. The brick-colored building across the street from me and that I am looking at is marked with pin B, and that's Ghirardelli Square. We'll talk about that more later. Now the map is pointing in the direction that I'm looking, towards Russian Hill, and you can see now marked halfway up the hill is Russian Hill Reservoir with pin C. We'll eventually go there. Here's the view from where I'm standing right now. There's a lot of buildings and history here in Aquatic Park, so I'm going to go through it chronologically, starting back in the 1850s, well, let's say 1850. And I'm going to start over there, up on that hill. It's called Black Point. Now we're going to walk over to the top of Black Point, and while we're going there, I'm going to talk about some of the things that have been there over the years and that we'll see there. In 1850, California became a state, and one of the first two senators from California was John Charles Fremont. Soon after he became a senator, he bought 13.5 acres of Black Point and eventually owned 70 acres of the surrounding area. He bought the point and the area to build a house for his wife, Jessie Benton, and the house was on top of the hill overlooking the bay. Here's a view of the house Fremont built on top of the point. And here you can see Jessie Benton on her back porch looking out over the bay. When we get there, I'll show you the view. Fremont was the first Republican candidate for the U.S. presidency in 1856 and then was appointed a major general at the beginning of the Civil War in 1860. He was a radical Republican and wanted to end slavery immediately and did not get along with Abraham Lincoln. They had so many disagreements that Fremont resigned in 1862. In 1863, Lincoln signed an executive order seizing all of Fremont's property in the area for the war effort. The government never paid Fremont for the land seized until 1968, when some of his heirs settled a lawsuit with the government over the seizure of the property. When the government took over Fremont's land, his house was immediately torn down and 12 cannons were installed pointing towards the bay. You can see them here in this photo. Later on, I'll show you what it looks like now up there. The Army base was eventually named Fort Mason, and the Army continued to control the area until the 1970s. Most of the old fort is now public parks and buildings. Another thing I wanted to talk about while we're walking to Black Point was San Francisco's first water system. A redwood flume was built to carry water from Lobos Creek near Baker Beach through the Presidio and to the bottom of Black Point right on the cove. The water was then pumped up the Hyde Street Hill to two reservoirs. One of them was where the Russian Hill Reservoir was later located. This is a photo of the flume coming around Black Point. You can see it's basically just a redwood box that the water traveled through. On the map here, you can see how far the water had to travel. You can see Lobos Creek over near Baker's Beach, and it had to go all the way around and all the way to where the Flume water pump was, which is at the bottom of Black Point, and then up the hill to Russian Hill Reservoir. Here's an original map from the time. You can see the course of the water, and you can also notice that they plan to completely fill in much of the cove. As you can see, I've made it to the stairs that go up to the top of the point. So I will make this go fast so we can get up there quickly. All right, here we are at the top of the hill. What you're going to see when I turn around is where Fremont's house was. And then this is also where the 12 guns were placed in 1864 during the Civil War. The brick fortification you're looking at was unearthed in an excavation they did in 1980. So that is original to the 1864 fortification. Here's the view from what would have been Fremont's back porch and where the Civil War cannons were pointing towards the bay. At this point, I'm done with Black Point, so let's go back to where I started walking and we'll look at the next thing in Aquatic Park. In 1862, a woolen mill called the Pioneer Woolen Mill dominated this entire landscape in front of this cove. And it operated here till about the 1890s. And in 1893, the Ghirardelli family bought what was then the remnants of the woolen mill and built their new factory here. And it was a center of Ghirardelli for many years. Okay, now we're going to walk to the mill inside Ghirardelli Square. The first mill was built here in 1858, but it was destroyed by fire in 1860. The building that we will see was part of the mill built in 1862. During the Civil War, the only thing that this mill produced was uniforms for Union soldiers. This photo of the mill is from 1868. The largest building is the one that's still standing. Notice the original water line of the bay, which is much higher than it is today. We'll talk about that a little bit later and I'll tell you why that is. Another thing that you can see in this photo is the water flume we already talked about that comes around Black Point. Okay, so now we're at Ghirardelli Square. I'm entering it now. The building straight ahead of me is the old Pioneer Woolen Mill building. You can see it's 4 stories high on the water side. Now I'm going to go upstairs to get a view of the front of the building and the side that most people entered. So on this level, the building's going to be 3 stories high. And we'll go up one more flight of stairs and then get a view of the whole building. You'll see that where most people entered the building, it was only 2 stories high. So you can see it's built into the hill that came up from the cove. This is Ghirardelli Square here, and you can see all the shops. Alright, so here's the front of the building. And in a second, I'll show you the side of the building. Okay, now let's go back to where we started walking. In 1895, the Dolphin Swimming Club and the South End Rowing Club set up shop here to use this cove for rowing and swimming. And they set up at the end of Van Ness Avenue over where the Sea Scout building is now, which is the white building on pilings. And they hope to preserve this cove. Lots of people still use the cove for swimming today, and there's still a rowing club. After the 1906 earthquake, the city started using this cove as a dumping ground, and lots of bricks from what was left of the Palace Hotel on Market Street were brought here and dumped into the cove. And that's largely what's become the park part of Aquatic Park today. This is a photograph of the damage done to the Palace Hotel in the earthquake, and you can see all the debris that's going to need to be hauled away. Debris from the damage done to Chinatown was also brought to Point Cove and dumped there. Originally, the water line of this cove was up near where Ghirardelli Square is now, behind you. And most of this has been filled in, but not nearly as much as the entire shoreline of San Francisco. This is the only cove that really exists anymore, and about half of it is still here. What happened to most of the coves along San Francisco Bay is that there was a rail line that went along the waterfront called the Belt Rail Line. When the rails came to a cove, they would build a low bridge or trestle connecting the 2 points of the cove. The city would then slowly fill in the cove until the rail line was on land. Here in this map from 1860, you can see all the little coves along the water line of San Francisco. In this Google Earth image, you can see how the water line has been completely smoothed out until you reach Point Cove and Aquatic Park. Point Cove wasn't completely filled in because it was difficult to build a railroad around Point, and it is farther out from downtown, so the rail line did not get here until people cared enough about the cove to try to protect it. In 1914, a tunnel was dug through Point and a trestle was built across the cove. You can also see in the background the Dolphin Swimming Club, and you can understand why they were not happy about the rail line or the filling in of the cove. The rail line isn't used anymore, but the tunnel is still there, and you can see along the water line where the tracks for the rail went. The earthquake also led to the fire department building a pumping station to help pump water so that if there was another huge fire, that they would be able to use bay water to help put out the fire. And you can see a building right over there. Here's the location of the San Francisco Fire Department pumping station number 2. It's in the same location that the pump house was for the first water system in San Francisco. there wasn't enough water to put out the fires that were created by the earthquake in 1906. So the hope was that building pumping stations like this that would pump water out of the bay would help protect the city if we ever had a fire like this again. Right now they're working on saving the pump house, and they're in the process of putting on a new roof for the building. This is where I'm going to end episode 1. Next time we'll continue and we'll go up to Russian Hill. I'll leave you now with a 360-degree view from where I'm standing, and I'll see you next time.